Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Pielka. Today is November 9, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure, and I mean it really, sincerely in my heart, an honor and a pleasure to be here today with Snowden Becker. Where in the heck you calling in from, Snowden?
Oh, right, in beautiful Valley Village, California. In between. So if this is the 101 and this is the 170, I'm right in here, in the little pocket between North Hollywood, Studio City, and Sherman Oaks.
Okay, now officially, the first question is, what is the best thing for a human being? But I have to make a comment because one of the best things for me being a human being was all the support and help you've given me all these years in archive, film festival, in so many ways. So thank you so much, Snowden. It's been
Oh,
an honor and
well,
a pleasure to know you, and I thank you from my deep in my heart. Thank you so much.
oh, thank you, Jerry. I will say, in all earnestness, the best thing for human beings is other human beings. It's been such a
Yeah,
privilege to get to know you and your work, the work of filmmakers that you've supported through the Pixel This Festival. The all of the scholars and filmmakers that I've gotten to know and work with, and collectors that I've gotten to know and work with through my years as an archivist. So yeah, it's people. The best thing for
yeah,
people is
people.
other people.
You
I
started
that's
off, you hit it out of the ballpark. That's the right answer. There's no right or wrong answers to any of these
That's the
questions.
right one. Yeah, no,
That
that's the
is,
right one.
I'm
Especially, and
serious.
especially when we're I think we're in this moment. It's the day after election day, so I think a lot of us are thinking a lot more and more specifically about what it means to be part of a community or to be part of a society, and to participate in that society, to have a voice or to feel voiceless. I think this is a moment where we're really aware of how much we depend upon other human beings for our very survival.
So true. Thank you. So, what's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Oh, what a great question. I I've learned, and we were talking previously about knitting. I've learned that I'm a kinesthetic learner. So for me, I'm a very visual person, but I like to be able to get my hands on things, or to be able to visualize and embody. So for me, being able to learn by doing is how I really cement information in me, and that might mean that I write things down, or I take notes when somebody is talking and I want to remember something. I would rather have a note written in my own hand than a sound recording, for instance.
Yeah,
So for me, yeah, I'm a combination of visual and tactile.
it's
Those are
really,
the ways
really
I let
good.
in.
During my podcast, people they have in common, but I'm always looking down because I'm taking notes. So I take 6 pages of notes, 8 pages of notes in all these podcasts, but it looks like I'm not paying attention. So the next
So
question goes along with this is, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Oh, I think that it keeps us company. I mean, I think that um I am a person who, if I go into somebody's house and they don't have any books around, that is a suspect person to me. And that's something that I've had to be mindful of, my own longstanding prejudices in that area, because I've been acquiring fewer and fewer books as more and more of the books that I read on a device. I read on my phone. Because I can check out a library book on my phone and always have a book with me without the extra weight.
Yep.
So that's been a change. So I think it's possible now for people to be incredibly well read without owning a single book. And
It's
so
amazing.
I'm trying to be more mindful of how I take the measure of a person through the space that surrounds them. But I think that information keeps us company, and the
Yeah.
things that we have are important to us. I mean, and I don't think humans are alone in that respect. There are species of aquatic snail, that hermit crabs, that decorate their shells. Like there's I think an instinct to accumulate, to to create a habitat that includes not just the functional, but the formal and the decorative and the informational as well.
So well put. You're really a wordsmith, and I appreciate it because you've so much done what I try to aspire to in my life, and is get your job and your life as mixed up as possible. So there's no difference. But you know, then there's the cliche that goes, don't take your job home with you. It's like I don't have a choice. But I have to tell you one anecdote. I am like that. I judge people. If I go into their house, I look at their bookshelves. And then I'm like, well, is this your book or is this your partner's book? I want to know whose book, who got that book. And
sometimes it's so easy to tell. It's just like, like his and theirs. Yeah.
This guy we went to in Maine at this music festival, he had no books in his house at all, except next to the toilet. He had a book that was If Outhouses Could Talk.
Oh.
And it was like the coolest book.
They'd say.
Cool. And he had a Xerox machine. I says, could I Xerox this book? This book is too cool. But it's like so stupid, if outhouses could talk, that intrigues you. But you already
talk shit all day, obviously.
But you already answered this in a way, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Is this need or want to collect information more innate in us or more invented by us?
Well, I think the argument that it is innate is quickly dispensed with when you look at the number of people who just aren't that attached to their stuff. And the number of people who also, but it's reinforced by the number of people who have stuff that they have trouble getting rid of. So I think nature and nurture would be my answer to that. I think it's got to be a little bit of both. I think that, and especially in a society where we have literally pathologized having stuff, that we have obsessive disorders like hoarding and animal hoarding, where the signals are getting mixed up, like the desire to care for other creatures, or to have the food and comforts and shelter that you need for your basic, Maslow hierarchy bottom tier stuff, that can go out of whack. But the question of what is excessive and what is not, that's not a universal judgment. Like that is not a one size fits all. And we don't have a hard and fast rule about how much stuff is too much stuff, or what constitutes clutter versus decor.
That's the ultimate in my house. Get that box of junk out of here. I goes, that's not junk, that's an archive.
I think that George Carlin said it really pitchily when he said your stuff, other people's stuff is shit, and your shit is stuff. So and all your house is for your stuff.
I can constantly tell my wife, wait a minute, Snowden isn't a professional archivist, and she's going to come and take this away from our house.
Well, I think that a lot of people are surprised to learn that as an archivist and as a librarian, I am very pro throwing things away. I am very pro not keeping everything. And if you're looking for somebody to endorse the let's keep everything, I'm not your archivist. I'm not your girl for that. And in fact, I'm in a big reading project at a library where I work right now. Like, I'm trying to get rid of 1,000 books. So if you know anybody who wants like old books, like, a 1986 edition of The Only Tax Guide You'll Ever Need, some books you just don't need anymore. And maybe you never needed in the first place. So
it's funny because I love to talk about books. Myron Mizell is a great film critic in LA. And one time I says, I want to show that film of yours that's about Charlie Chaplin. Do you have a copy? And he says, my wife threw out our only VHS copy. And I turned to my wife and I said, Susie, thank you. Because my wife, She puts it in a pile and say, here's the stuff I want you to throw out. 99% of it will go out, but that one little percent, like that one VHS that is important, doesn't. So the next question is, do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thoughts create emotions. I mean, how else can actors act, right? I mean, that's all of that is internal, and that's, how can you think about like your puppy who died and like cry on command? I mean, those are real. And I think the idea of something is often more potent emotionally than the thing itself. We
The
can
idea is that's good. So I don't know what I think until how would you fill in the blank? I don't know what I
say it.
think until you say it.
Yeah.
That's
I'm a big thinker out loud. I mean, it's one of the reasons that working alone and working from home during the pandemic was super hard for me, because
yeah,
I'm not a social worker, but I am a social worker. I am more productive
yeah,
and more activated when I have other people around
yeah.
that I can talk to. And yeah, I
Well,
often don't know
that's
what I think until I've said it, and I have to sometimes say things, talk my way into my own ideas.
this is I got it from McLuhan. He says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. So it's interesting how people answer that. Can humans think without language?
There, there are people who research that, and there are also people who I know lack or are different in how they like they don't have a visual imagination. They if you tell them, like, picture this, like their minds genuinely don't form pictures. That is a known phenomenon, and a lot of people go through the world not realizing that they're different in that way, until they stumble across it. So the can we think without language? Absolutely. I think many cultures are more conceptual. I think that the way we think, and I think this is, like pure Wittgenstein, even though I don't know his work well enough to quote him. The way we think is reflected in our language. Like, we can't, if we're not thinking, we don't have language. And the word the if we don't have words for it, we can't think of it, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's a culture, a
Mhm.
tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do, Snowden, when language breaks down? When language doesn't work, what do you do?
You go vote. We're living in a political moment where a lot of language has lost meaning, or lost its widely received meaning. Where, like, there's facts and alternative facts, like that. It used to just be like facts for facts. Um, we we are. I think we're experiencing a moment of that right now, um, where the the idea that um, words carry a connotation that is shared amongst people. The phrases that come up a lot, like dog whistle, like a political coverage, where it's like, oh, well, when you say that, it sounds fine, but people who know that you mean something completely different, that doesn't sound fine at all. And I've been pondering a lot about the use of the word woke. That it used to be a compliment. Somebody was woke if they were really they were hip to stuff. They grokked things, and they were tuned into a not necessarily pleasant but important reality. And now, that word has been co-opted by completely other groups in society and turned into a pejorative, and
Yeah.
a very scolding word. And I am sad about that, and I'm particularly sad about communities that persistently see their language and their terminology. You know,
Yeah.
they develop a way to talk amongst themselves. They develop shibboleths and jargon, that creates a safe way for them to communicate with one another. And then, the second you let somebody in who's from outside your community, they start thinking that they can speak your language, and then also taking your language and perverting your language. And I think that that's a really hard thing to experience.
It's hard.
And I think colonized peoples experience this. I think that minority groups of all kinds experience this, and it's part of a larger hegemonic impulse that humanity leans toward, for better or for worse.
Yeah. It's a stupid question. I know it's both, and it depends.
No stupid question, Jerry.
Are humans are we more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
Well, my Myers-Briggs score says that I am a more thinking person. I don't know. I think that we exist on a spectrum of thinking to feeling. I think that I am a cogitator for sure. As a the question of would if aliens came to this planet and looked at us as the the most advanced, possibly the most advanced form of life on this planet, and were analyzing us across their entire experience, right? Like all of the possible known universes and known kinds of creature, like I would they say we are more thinking than feeling? I would say more feeling, because we do a lot of stuff as a species that is not like that Mr. Spock would say, like, that's not logical, Captain.
Well, this is what I say is, like, we invented the word thinking and feeling, so we think we can separate them. Yeah. And so we really can't, but it's beautiful how you said it, because you put it in your own context and then you put in a wider context. 2 questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
That begs the question of whether the soul exists.
Yeah.
I would have to say no. I think that there are creatures that exist that have what I would, for lack of a better vocabulary, call a life force. Some animating spark.
Yeah.
That I that don't have anything that we could identify as a brain. There are jellyfish, for instance, that they are some of the most alive creatures on this planet. So much so that they can, they're jellyfish that can turn back the clock on themselves because they want to live so badly. So that animating spark is, I think, separate from consciousness.
Whoa! So now you really anticipate an upcoming question.
Okay, ask me about consciousness, because that seems easier than asking about the soul.
You have ESP, and I love when people anticipate the next question. But let's finish with the Turing. The other Turing question is, can machines think?
Machines can do the kind of calculation and a lot of the functions that we would like to outsource, like remembering things. Machines are great at that. So thinking just as sort of a mechanical process and calculating. Machines are great at calculating. Can machines judge? Very poorly. Machines have terrible judgment. Even worse than humans. Like humans have pretty bad judgment, but machines are even worse. And it's because we taught them. So
look at this is what I love, Snowden, because it's essentially me and you are psychoanalyzing all my questions and how they're worded. So you added a question like, can machines judge? and that was good. So the question you anticipate is, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we actually creating it?
Yeah. I mean, we are really, if you think about the boundary line between waking and sleeping. I mean, I think
Yeah.
waking is when we start laying the railroad tracks out in front of us, when our consciousness, resumes. But I think that there is some like yet to be determined like length of track that exists, underneath our wheels, that we can be spinning down while we sleep, while we're not actively aware of ourselves. I think that as somebody who is a from time to time practitioner of yoga, the effort to abandon, to willfully let go of consciousness, and um to to drop the reins of consciousness, and think of nothing and feel everything, that is a very tricky needle to thread. So I think that says something about our wiring, and particularly a contemporary Western, or like industrial age American, or information age American brain wiring, and our very culturally specific kind of consciousness.
That's two things. That was beautifully well put. Because I do yoga once a week, and I wish I do yoga, every day. But
The reason I don't
but
do it more is because it's so hard. I mean, it's
well,
like,
it is hard. It is hard, but it's like Yoko said. She said breathing is yoga, and I
Mhm,
goes, well, bike riding for me is yoga. Every
mhm,
day I'm bike riding, I'm in a yoga state. But
yeah.
it's like Bridget Bardot said, back to thinking. She goes, I don't think when I make love, and I'm like, good luck. How can you just
I
rid of
know, I
thinking?
wish.
You're doing you wish you could, and that's like when people say I meditate, they go, now think about not thinking.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and
I'm
so
about
that's that.
meditation. Meditation
Yeah,
is like a non-starter for me. That was it's not like you get grades when you go to yoga class, or that like it's not like a contest you can win. But I did a yoga teacher training, and the assignments that we had to like just try to start a meditation practice. I was so bad at that, Jerry. I mean,
yeah,
I just couldn't
yeah.
do it. I'm very bad at meditating, and yeah, I'm trying
Well,
to. Yeah, here we go. Like the
you
sun.
you remind me of a lot of Kelly Carlin, George Carlin's daughter, because
That's such
she
a compliment. She's so brilliant.
oh, she's brilliant. But every question I asked her, and this was not too long ago, she would crack up. Then she would take like a yoga breath. And then she would start talking, and it was like so cool because she knew I'm not really being serious, but in a way, I am being serious. But I want to be playful,
Yeah.
And so this is, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Oh, for me, happiness comes from meaning. I am somebody who I am a work to live person. I or no, I'm a live to work person. I have been with, most of my partners, and the people that I have shared my life with have been work to live people. Like they go to work, they do a thing. It's not
Yeah,
how they identify. It's not woven into the core of their existence. I am a live to work person.
yeah,
If if I were the person that was holding that $2 billion lottery ticket, um I genuinely
right.
wouldn't want to quit working. I mean,
Yeah,
I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I
yeah.
would have to come up with like new little jobs for myself as a rich person that
But does that's what, I don't ask this that often, but I love it, is where'd you get your work ethic from?
I I think from a deep desire to not let other people down.
Yeah,
And I like to win. So,
that's
like
good.
I said, even in yoga class, like there would be stuff that, and I understand, like yoga, like you do what you can with what's in your practice, like what your body can do. Like it was 2011 before I could touch my toes, like I'd still do it sometimes just to be like, I can do that. There's people who can do stuff with their bodies just because of how their bodies are put together. There are the days during yoga teacher training when I could get into like the lock or like the most advanced expression of the pose. I'd be like, I want yoga today. And knowing that that's not a very yogic attitude, but the desire to really deliver the goods is where my work ethic comes from. That's also what sometimes trips me up, not wanting to disappoint people and always wanting to like under promise and over deliver. If I haven't over delivered enough, then I sometimes feel like I failed, and that's not a healthy thing. So it's a thing I'm working on.
But Snowden, you can talk about it, so you've won there. You can say that and acknowledge it. You won. And there's two things. That's like Nassim Taleb's quote. This question I don't I didn't ask for years, and now I'm sort of been using it. The question is, are we hardwired for competition? But first, I want to interject one thing. If you look on Wikipedia under work ethic, about the third paragraph down, it says this could be a scam by consumer commodity culture. And I love that. But I think humans are. Are we hardwired for competition? Are we hardwired for what you just said? These desire to not let others down. And then you said win. But Chuck, I would just love to get your opinion of this quote. Games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, you don't know who really won or lost, but you can tell who is a hero and who is not.
I don't agree with that. I think there are very quiet heroes out there. I think that there's a strong tendency, particularly in our culture, to associate heroism with being out front. We have less of a tradition, although in the 70s and 50s and through the 70s, we had more of a growing awareness of this idea of servant leadership and like subsuming your personal ego and your own individual goals for the better of a community or humanity. And to lead by giving of yourself in the ways in which you were directed externally, not internally. So I think heroism is a protean kind of concept. So I disagree that that you can always tell who's the hero. Like I really think you can't. And I think especially now that the systems in which we work are so complex that that often heroism takes the form of maintenance and just and attention to detail and the picayune. I mean, it was deeply distressing to hear that so many of the systems maintenance engineers at Twitter had gotten laid off because in any sufficiently complex system, there's always like some person who knows that like that particular like stall in the stable gets really damp and you have to shovel it out. Like we have 21st century equivalents of that in really complex systems like Twitter, where it's like, that server has got to be manually cleared out every week or so, or the whole place comes crashing down. Like the work of the unseen work of maintenance is heroic work because it's often so thankless and so so little regarded by people who really consider themselves the hero of every story. The people in management or leadership positions think they're the heroes, and they're really not. It's the people who know how to put a trash bin liner in the trash can and tie it in such a way that it actually stays in and doesn't like fall in and make a bigger mess. Like those people are legit heroes.
That is so cool. And
that kind of, and that's craft knowledge. We were talking about craft knowledge earlier,
that's craft knowledge. That is a great term you taught me. And it's so important. You're my hero because, and I'm sincere, because you listen closely to the words and then you think about them and then you tell me what you think about them. So I read off these quotes and people just think, oh yeah, that's a good quote. They don't really listen to the quote.
You asked if I agreed, so I'm gonna have to think about that for a minute. Yeah,
right, because they think, oh, he picked a quote. He might, like McLuhan. They says because I'm talking about it doesn't mean I agree with it, but I'm just using it as a probe for us to. But I think it carries a lot. So then, after saying that Talib quote, someone said, well, villains don't think they are bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. So I thought that was an interesting reaction to the quote. And then I brought up, does punishment work? Because if there are villains and there are non-heroes, does punishment work? Because, like Bateson, the anthropologist, said, if you catch someone doing something wrong, do they go, oh, I'm socially and I did something socially and morally wrong? Or do they just go, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day and I got caught?
Yeah, exactly. Are you sorry? Are you genuinely sorry, or are you sorry you got caught? I mean, I haven't read a lot of Foucault, but Foucault talks about this in Surveiller Punir, which we have historically translated as discipline and punish. But it's to observe or to surveil and punish. And I think the idea of punishment has, he talks in the introduction to that book, which I was pleasantly surprised to find Foucault is readable even in translation as he is, and like I think a lot of the stuff that he says is right on. He talks in the introduction to that book about how socially European and sort of European and American cultures moved away from corporal punishment of the body and punishment as spectacle, to punishment through retraction of privilege. You get sent to jail. That means you don't get the privilege of moving freely. You don't get the privilege of partaking freely in society. So the question of, and I have a friend, Peter Moskos, who wrote a little book called In Defense of Flogging, where he lays out a very concise case for the social benefits of returning to that regime of corporal punishment. That, like, you have transgressed against society, we're going to take it out on you literally and physically. We're going to, you're going to get 50 lashes or 5 lashes, you're going to get caned. I mean, this is still punishment that exists in places like Singapore. And or in Russia, where we're going to sentence you to hard labor. We're going to really take it out of you. And you're going to pay your debt to society in the form of wounds on your body, scars on your skin, and not years off your life. Or you'll be punished by your absence from society. You will be notable for your absence. And I think punishment works too well in many ways because it means that you could take a few years out of life for a lot of reasons. You're not necessarily in jail or sobering up, but any blank space on your resume is viewed as suspect now. So we to return to the idea of the work ethic as being a late stage capitalist plot, the idea that you're ever going to take a break makes you a bad person. That you're going to suffer for that, and you're going to continue to suffer for it.
Which I think is yoga. If I come from Flint, Michigan, where all my friends were destined to be shop rats. And then what happened? They drank Robitussin and built your cars. And then you said, fuck that shit. I ain't buying an American car. These suck. I buy a car built in another country.
Yeah,
Because
I'm going to go where the fit and finish is better.
Yeah, because they're all drinking Robitussin to make your car because there's no brake. I said, that's an easy solution. Let them do yoga for 15 minutes in the middle of their shop rat day. It's like, as soon as I started doing yoga, I thought this could have been an amazing thing. So what happened? You get the yuppies invent the internet, and then you have Google having yoga and sushi and salad bar at their job at your job.
Yeah, and it becomes a privilege, right? It becomes something that that people don't get to do. I hate to sound like such a stereotypical like white lady, like middle-aged white lady about this, but I really do believe that people's bodies should be better cared for. Like as a society, we should care more about people's bodies. And
don't feed us chips and soda on every street corner.
Yeah,
that's all.
Make it possible for people to have preventive care. I mean, I'm really in favor of the idea that as a social value, as a shared social value, that we should have that rest should be prized, that vacation should be prized, and that
and you're going to be more productive if you allow them to do yoga, then have a nap, then go back to work because you're going to be a shop rat. But let me just go back to
you talk about naps, how much I love naps. Naps
Me too.
Whoever invented them deserves the Nobel Prize for not just peace, but also science, because it's such a great invention, because you get to go to sleep and then later you get to go to sleep again. And how great is that? Like, whoever thought that up is a genius.
That is beautiful. I'm glad you think that it's an invention, because my main study is McLuhan and Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. But I just want to make this clear. You mentioned the author Vico, Vico. Is that
Foucault, Michel
Foucault? Okay, Foucault. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that I didn't mishear that. So you were saying about Foucault. Okay. So now we're going to skip the format because we went into this, but we'll go back.
Okay.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Oh no, evil people exist. There's some people who are just evil, who are irredeemable, and who know what they're doing. I don't think they're being used by the devil or any outside force. Like they are actively choosing, a path that is destructive, antisocial, cruel, and stupid, because it gives them some sort of pleasure that I personally wouldn't derive from those same kind of acts, that I wouldn't be able to stomach doing that.
So here's the follow-up. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I set it up with a few modern thinkers. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question, Snowden, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you react to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I see his point. I think it's an incomplete point. I think that because I think that the point that's particularly wise is like the seeing. Like, it's not a superficial seeing. Like, if you are just looking at your enemy, you're not necessarily seeing them. When you are in opposition to somebody, and I think that I want to step back a bit and say I am wary of the sequencing here, because you talked about evil, or you asked about evil, and then you talked about enmity, and I see that very as very different. Like, I'm not gonna assume somebody is evil because we are in opposition. I have been in a lot of places where, you know, we have, you know, I have a strong opinion, somebody else has a strong opinion, we happen to be in opposition. I do not presume, or, you know, I'm not the kind of person who thinks like that person is defying me, they are evil, you know, like they don't want me to have my way, or they disagree with me, and therefore, like, you know, they deserve to be wiped off the face of the earth. Or they must be a bad person because they don't see things my way. I think that that's where the question of sight and insight, and you know, just really recognizing that, like, okay, I see you and I see what you're getting at, and I will allow you the fullness of your humanity. You know, I will allow you have different motivations here than my own, and that's what's led you to a different decision. So I think that it does give power to their point. You know, it doesn't necessarily allow them to overpower you, but it is a great reminder that they're just coming from a different place. And I learned recently the distinction between you know, in conflicts between task conflict and values conflict. You know, when you are working with a team of people, or on a project, or sort of in a society, and you know, it's kind of the difference between tactics and strategy, right? Task conflict is like, oh, I think we should accomplish this goal through these steps, or take the freeway. You know, oh, you think we should take the freeway because it's faster and there's no traffic lights. I think we should take the surface streets because, you know, I like to see what's going on, and it might take longer, but we're not in a hurry. So that's task opposition. Values opposition is something different, where it's just like, we fundamentally disagree about where we're going. And that is less surmountable. And so that, for me, thinking about enemies or people who I'm opposed to, I want to make sure that I am seeing them, and really allowing them, you know, like allowing things to not be personal where they're not personal. I think that that's one of the ways that I have maintained a really broad professional and personal community is just, you know, being able to be a grown-up and let stuff go that might feel hurtful if I personalized it.
Really well put, Snowden. So well put. Yeah, the American Zen says, take nothing personal. It's like, good luck. It doesn't mean we can't practice it. And the beauty also is that you observe the sequencing in my questions. No one ever says that. Well, you know, they're
called you on your bullshit, Gary.
Yeah, well, this is good because that you would have loved this one woman. You probably know her. I can't think of her name, but I says, is it more this or more that? She goes, the word more doesn't function in your question. And I says, I love it. So here's Audre Lorde, the poet. You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded to her and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
I love that Audre Lorde quote. I use it a lot. You know, fire. You know, it's actually a very old tool. Like, burn the damn house down.
That is cool. Fire. That is the best. Burn it down.
I mean, I think that you know, especially having come out of an academic position, like I am more and more of a mind towards revolution these days. That like if it's not working, you know, a lot of stuff is catastrophically not working, and it's you know, like deck chairs on the Titanic time for a lot of the structure of society. I think
when Trump got in, I says, shouldn't we storm the castle? And then January 6th happened. I went, whoops.
Oh wait, maybe not like that. Yeah, like, not like that though.
Oh no! But I love that tool is burned. Now, what new toy do you suggest?
What new toy? Gosh, oh, what a great question. I mean, my mind doesn't go to toys so much as to games. I mean, I guess dolls. I mean, if to circle back to the one of your
Yeah.
first questions, like what is good with people, like, you know, the dolls are so, and it's not a new toy. So I guess I'm
No,
not really
but see,
impressed.
that's the thing. When I imply the word new,
Mm,
often people erase it and just go, I'm just going to go with this. They hear the word tool. So
yeah.
let's go with dolls.
New toy,
Let's,
let's go with dolls. Like, like show me on the doll where it hurts you, or like what,
yeah,
like use the doll to say the things that you don't want to say yourself. Like it's the doll talking.
well,
Those are tools that I think are useful.
that's exactly the next question is McLuhan learned from Ezra that is so by artists, I mean painters, archivists, musicians. Artists are the intent of the race, and they're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So, Snowden, I asked you the question McLuhan probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Well, not everybody does, right? So you have communities like the Amish and the Mennonites that are really, really thoughtful. The social interactionism, this idea that if a tool or a system is not adopted by a community, no matter how well designed it is by definition a non-functional tool or a bad tool if it's not adopted by the community. And so I wrote a paper years and years ago in grad school about the social interactionist nature of those community-based decisions to adopt or not adopt a particular technology, to allow something worldly into the community, and to decide collectively and upon long and somber reflection whether the net benefits would be worth the potential disruptions. And I think that is, that points to the luxury of time that we often don't take, or the crucial element of time that we often don't take as a society in deciding like whether we're going to do something. It's like by the time we decide like maybe that's not a great idea, it's too late. Like the horses
Too
out the
late.
barn.
Yep. Yeah. The hidden psychic, the hidden invention that runs the world now is electricity. No, it's basically we have spoken word, printed word, and electronic word. In spoken word includes gesture. So what we don't understand that the hidden is like you pull the plug and no one can do their phones anymore. There are no more blackouts. And guess what happened when there were blackouts? When there were blackouts, which meant no electricity, people made love and kids were born. That's what happened. There was more love making when there was no electricity
And
for 2 days.
Stories got
And
told.
stories got told. Yeah, there's much. But the follow-up question to this is, do artists have moral obligation?
Yeah, absolutely. More than most people, I think.
No.
Because art is, I think, axiomatically an attempt to reach others. And so if you are merely communicative and sort of, mendacious in your intent, you're not an artist. You're a huckster. You're a salesperson.
Yeah.
You may have a moral compass that's a few degrees off true north, but if you are an artist, if you consider yourself an artist, and if what you are doing is making art, then you absolutely are bringing a morality to it.
Are you
Whether you
more
admit it or not,
whether you admit it or not? Yeah.
There's some artists who are just like, oh yeah, no, I'm not that, like, I'm not into that stuff. It's like, dude, you totally are. Come on. You don't want to be responsible for the fact that your art is denigrating to women. Like you don't want
That's
to
it.
don't want to or whatever. Like you don't want to own the impact of your art and potentially have to, grow and be a better person
Yep.
You're just going to abdicate responsibility.
Yep. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I can't think of any new ideas. They're all
Yeah.
old ideas.
They're all old.
Yeah, I'm afraid of people who don't realize that they're all old ideas, that think that it's the disruptors. The people who are like, oh, I have this great idea. We're gonna have like a bookstore, but it's free. And and they don't realize that like they've just invented the library, something that's
Right.
yeah, I'm worried about people who think that their ideas are new and who are ahistorical in their understanding
Yes.
of the world, who are unrooted in a past that pre-exists them and a future that will post-date them. There are people who are living in this intense now,
That's it.
that don't think the past or the future deserve their attention.
You're leading perfectly into this question, but I'm not quite there yet. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever?
I have some early memories. I don't know where. I know where they are located geographically. So they were, in the house where I was born in Seattle. I don't know where they fall sequentially. So I have some very early memories of my my first couple of years of life in that house.
Is
I have
is
a memory
memory
of and getting a pine needle stuck in my throat, and
wow.
that's a very potent tactile memory.
Yeah. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Well, I think that forgetting and memory are the two sides to the coin, right? And of curse and blessing. There is a curse, in Jewish culture, that may his name and memory be forgotten, like the which in a way is also a blessing, to be relieved of the burden of a painful memory,
Yeah.
is a real blessing for many people and in many circumstances. The right to be forgotten is one that I think we're fighting for as a culture, as we outsource more and more of our memory to digital machines and platforms. And persistence is becoming more of a problem than it ever has been, because the persistence is also accompanied by pervasiveness. It wouldn't be so bad if things lasted a long time if they didn't go everywhere, but things go everywhere and they last a long time, and the distribution is unpredictable, and that can be a real problem.
Yep.
So yeah, I think memory, the persistence of things is a double-edged sword.
Yep. Tell me someone within your immediate family, please, just briefly, and then outside your immediate family who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
Somebody in my immediate family. Well, my immediate family is small. I have one brother, and I have two parents. I have a mom and a dad, and they're still together. Um, I I would have to say my parents and their relationship were really formative for me, in
That's
terms
what
of
you mainly got from your mom and your dad was
Mhm.
that they've stuck together for what, 50, 60 years?
Yeah, 50. They're, I think, on 52 years, 53 years and counting
Yeah.
now. And I like to joke that they had a May-December relationship. They met in May and married in December. They really it was a classic case of like, when you know. Um, and I've seen them go through radically different roles. Like, their roles within the relationship have changed radically, every 5 years or so over that half century. And the choices that they made about who they were each going to be individually and as part of a couple, were really interesting for me to observe, first as a child and now as an adult, with a relationship of my own, and eventually a marriage of my own. And I think it helped me, my parents, and their very long marriage, and their the compromises and the deals and the exchanges that they've made throughout that marriage really helped me understand when my own marriage was over, and helped me have a good divorce, to help me be, to recognize that, like, I can still care about somebody, and also understand that our paths no longer lie in the same direction. So yeah, I'm really grateful to my parents for that. And by the same token, I'm grateful to my ex, as somebody who's outside of my family, who taught me how to be my own person, taught me that I didn't have to be either of my parents in my relationship. I could have my own relationship. And it's like every personality test you take, from, cosmopolitan quizzes to, to the Myers-Briggs, they can tell you what your tendencies are, but you don't have to be your tendencies. You can
great
independence from those tendencies. And choose a different path.
That is so well put. So did you want to just say your ex was the person outside your immediate family?
Yeah.
Good. That was really well put. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
No, I was raised unchurched. So much
unchurched. That is a
in
great.
fact, that I participated in a Lucia festival. My piano teacher, when I was 9, was Lutheran, and she coordinated the local festival of St. Lucia at the church. And I thought I was going to get in trouble, because I realized, like, halfway through months of rehearsals, that we were singing a song about Jesus, and I knew that we didn't have him in our house, and I didn't know if it was because he was bad, or he was just like not a guy we knew. And so I was really careful when we were performing that song, I was really careful to, like, mouth the words so that I could have plausible deniability with my parents. Be like, I know that song was about Jesus, but I wasn't singing. Like, I didn't inhale. I didn't inhale any of the incense. Through having dated quite a few Jewish guys and people of other faiths, I have definitely come to see how much being an American, white person means that I've been steeped in a certain degree of Christianity. And I've been an art student and an art history student. The Christian iconography is really potent, and in many ways beautiful. Like, I love I think it's Saint Cecilia, who's always depicted with her eyes like on a platter or whatever, because she's like some guy was hitting on her. She devoted her life to God, and so he's like, you have pretty eyes, and she's like, you like them, take them. I don't know. Jesus is my husband. And I think that's so baller. Like, it's so
is amazing.
Outlandish.
That is great. Harold Bloom says this great thing. He says, do you believe in God? And he says, I don't like him, and I don't trust him, and I wish he'd go away, but I know he won't, because he's built into our language. He's part of the way we think. So but do you pray?
I don't. In fact, it's funny that you asked that question. I just had an exchange the other day about voting, and I said I put it in the same category as prayer. Like, somebody was like, "Does voting even work?" And I was like, "I put it in the same category as prayer." It's like, I'm like not super convinced it has any direct impact whatsoever. But like, when everything is really bananas, I'm willing to try whatever. Like, I'll try everything. Yeah.
I've told people that for years, because I was a poll cat for 15 years, and they go, what do you do? Voting just encourages them. I says, listen, it's psychological. Just thinking you're part. That's Andy Warhol. Things, it's not, you are not who you are. It's who you think you are.
Yeah.
Well,
but I'll do anything for a free sticker. I'm a child of the sticker collecting era. So we were talking about collecting earlier. Like, I go and vote for the sticker mostly. Like there's
The sticker,
there's
exactly.
like
That's
10% of
beautiful.
my brain that's like, this is amazing. Like women worked so hard for decades to get me this right to vote, just a mere short century ago. And then like the other 80% of my brain is like, give me the sticker. Like, oh yeah. Like, I'm more stoked to get that sticker than anything else.
I love your honesty. It's what you teach the kids when you're a polecat. The kids come in with the parents and they're trying to teach them, and they'll go, "You want an extra sticker?" And kids are like, "Stickers, yeah." And
well,
it's like
that token, even something as small as a sticker has been recognized for a long time as something that's a really potent totem for people.
it is potent.
You can buy a lot of cooperation with a sticker.
That's it.
That was one of the incentives that they used for the St. Louis baby tooth study. When there were, and to my shame, I don't remember the name of the scientist who pioneered this, but her hypothesis was that nuclear radiation from nuclear testing was harming humans, or was that was going to have a permanent effect on humans. And so she she knew that you could find strontium-90 deposited in human bones, but you can't test for human bones for strontium-90 while they're still inside the people. You can test teeth, and baby teeth fall out. So she collected hundreds of thousands of deciduous teeth. And one of the things that they had to overcome to get people to participate in the story, in the study, and submit their children's teeth, was the tradition of the tooth fairy. And
my God.
like that exchange, that transactional exchange of let me give you my teeth as a rite of passage, and you're going to give me a nickel or whatever. That they had to substitute something for that. They had to take the teeth and give you something else. And so one of the things they gave was like a sticker that said, or a button, a badge that you could wear that said, I gave my baby teeth to science.
What's the name of this study again? Or Seattle?
I will send you a link. It's the St. Louis baby tooth
Okay,
study.
St. Louis. Yeah,
it's in Wikipedia. Yeah, you can find it. And the woman, I mean, it's a really, really beautiful example of like excellent research methodology, like really well thought out research methodology, really impactful research. And just, the complexity and simplicity, simultaneous complexity and simplicity of it. I love things that are both complex and simple at the same time.
No, that is it. The great McLuhan guy called it media simplex. It's simple and complex. So if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Oh, God, I don't want to talk to God after I die. Like honestly, there are other people I want to talk to. If the afterlife is not a solitary place, or a return to to a diffuse global consciousness. I mean, like if I get to stay me after I die, if I retain a unique individuality, then there are other unique individuals that I'm going to seek out. Like God, God
that's good.
An individual, God isn't somebody that I have had an individual relationship with as in this life. And so I kind of feel like God can wait,
Beautiful. So well put. Again, thank you.
I'll have plenty of time to get to know him, her, them, or us, I guess.
So James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin over 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
The same reason we pay a therapist to tell us often the same things that our family and friends are telling us. Like, it's easier to hear it when we have some or see it, as the case is with cinema, if we have some mechanism to focus us. And for therapy, I think it's the designation of that, that little box, the therapeutic process, and the devotion of money to it, and our commitment to the therapeutic process, that makes it possible for a therapist to tell us something and it really sinks in, when it's like our mother has been telling us this, our best friend has been telling us this the whole time, but like we'll come out of therapy and be like, my therapist just told me the most amazing thing. Like, and if you're really looking at the faces of the people around you and you're sharing this like huge breakthrough you had, they'll be like, I told you that. I think the same thing, the work of cinema, and of fiction is very similar. We are deciding to devote attention to something that we know we're supposed to be listening to. And it's easier to do that than to pay attention to everything else around us all the time. I mean, there are very few people in this world who are truly attentive to everything all the time. I don't know that it's possible for us to be truly attentive to everything all the time. So we need fiction as sort of a rewind for that.
It's a rewind. You're such a great person with words, because what you're saying with the words to me right now, I really feel I'm getting it. So I just read this amazing line in this book called The Ink and the Grooves. It's conversation on literature and rock and roll. And I just thought what Dana says is amazing. She goes, most people I know have music, movie, and book references running through their minds all the time. These artifacts are part of how we make sense of the world and how we build our identities. So I like the word artifact there. I thought it applied to what you do. What was the tipping point when you said, I'm going to pursue archiving? How did you even know what archiving was? And you're going along studying what in high school and college, and then you go, that's my career, that's my compulsion, that's what I want to pursue. How did you find that? And how did that tipping point happen?
Yeah. How did I like when did I know that I was an archivist or a librarian?
Yeah, just your just briefly your the backstory there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so it's great that you asked that question, and I will tell you, I'm not 100% convinced all the time that I am still an archivist or have always been an archivist. So it always feels like I'm wearing at least a couple of different hats. But my background, in high school, I went to an arts magnet school. So I went to a regular high school for half the day, and then at lunchtime, my fellow magnet students, we called ourselves maggots. My fellow maggots and I would climb on a bus, and we would go to one of two local college campuses, and we would take sort of intensive courses throughout the afternoon in one of 5 disciplines. I was a visual arts student, and I chose a fine arts college because I was academically very successful. Like high school was relatively easy for me. I was, second in my class. I was in all the advanced placement classes and like gifted. And school had always been, something that I could do. Art was really hard. Like art made me work. And so that was what I wanted to do for college. Like I wanted to work hard at something. And, that was a place where I could see that sustained application. And again, this is one of the Yoga Sutras, right? It's like right in the first pada, like, sustained practice brings deep insight. The practice of yoga is continual, and it is through sustained practice and application over a long time that one achieves enlightenment. And that's why I loved art school. I wasn't particularly talented as an artist, but I grew a lot and I got a lot out of the art school education I had. I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, which is a school I have to say I'm so proud to be an alum of, because that's a school that has continued to grow and learn. They have a master's degree program. They have like a joint MFA MBA program so that you can get skilled as a student in the business of being an artist, which I think is brilliant. And so helpful, because I've known so many artists who they make it big and they don't know what to do with what they have, or they don't know how to market themselves, or they don't know that they can write off studio space or art supplies if they're making money from their art. So I got a great education there in critical thinking and creative problem solving. And this articulation that you've been so complimentary of, it was really honed in that critique environment, being pressed to say, like, what did you mean here? Like, what were you trying to achieve here? What is your point? And being able to get out of the facile approach in critique of, well, if it were my piece, I would have done this, but it's not your piece. It's this person's piece. How do you help somebody to their own voice? How do you help somebody to their own form of expression? That is a subtler kind of art. And I got a great education there. And then, also had a part-time job working for the Walters Art Museum, which was like a second home to me. And I realized that I didn't necessarily want to make art, but I did want to be around art. And I wanted to, there were beautiful things in that museum that felt like they belonged to me because I saw them every day and I appreciated them in a way that I think felt distinctive, and very personal. So I started working for museums and we have an acronym GLAM. The galleries are government, depending on who you ask. Galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. Like, so there's this sort of like, agglomeration of fields that work with collections of things and providing access to things and research, serving a research scholarly and consumptive audience through the work that we do. It's the GLAM professions. So it was through the museum work that really led me to getting a master's degree in library and information science, because I didn't want to be an artist. I wasn't talented in that way. I hadn't really found my medium, but I really understood the role of information in a collection. Working with
let's go off on that, Snowden, because we could go into knitting, but you can apply this if you will. But here's what a screenwriting teacher told me: great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Because you brought that up. What is your point? You just said that. Stanley Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process? Because as an archivist, you're being creative. You found your art form. So you don't necessarily, I mean, we could go off into knitting and you could say but what role does intention play in your creative process as being an archivist?
Yeah, I'm an access maximalist. Like, my point, the creation I'm striving for is a collection or a even an individual, a distinct object that somebody can access, somebody can understand, that has its fullness sort of presented in the form of context, and sort of like, you need to know these things about this object to understand why we have it here, why it's important. Context really matters for a lot of the material that I work with. And I'm thinking specifically of things like home movies, which have been, my stock and trade for a long time. And has led me down a bunch of different paths, in the spider web that is my career. The idea that, that the most famous home movies in the world are evidence of crimes in progress, from the David Tatsuno footage of the concentration camps that he and his family were incarcerated in during World War II, to the Rodney King video and the Zapruder film. The first film ever showed in a British courtroom was surveillance footage of a street gambling drug bust in 1935. I mean, the idea that that context really matters. And that for an archivist, what we are seeking to do is sort of pin that down and capture it, crystallize it, and package it with the thing itself whenever we can and through whatever means we can. Because otherwise it's just stuff, it's that VHS that Susie puts in the box you are the person with the context,
That's it.
and she has the knowledge to know that. And that's often that's been a failing, I think, of archives for a long time, is we have presented incomplete context, or we have not been able, because of the narrowness of our own experience and the homogeneity of the practitioners in our field, we have often not had the fullness of knowledge and experience that we should have in order to be doing art, to create the art that we set out to. I think we're doing better, but I think we have a long way to go.
Yeah, but Snowden, you've helped, and it's amazing because I want to interject. All those you surveyed all these important movies, and my dad documented, for let's say 20 to 30 years of our history with 8 hours of home movies. And we put him on archive.org, and he's dying. Years ago, we'd take him into the elders home, and my sister would show it on an iPad, and he goes, "Where'd you get this? That's my life." And it was amazing. And to me, that's my films now is my home movies. It's like, oh my God, this footage is like sacred. So I love that George Landau, the great experimental filmmaker, says, "We'll make fake home movies for you." He had a service, which is great, because everybody should, in a way, have home movies, or it's a great American tradition where your life was documented by your parents buying these cameras, and you became, and I love this whole home movies thing that you really helped grow into something important. But here's one thing, because I know we could do 5 salons on archiving. It's a little, I'm going to give a few prompts, but it's like Bob Dylan in that book says, a replica, or these are artifacts, are part of how we make sense of the world and our identity, as Dana said. But Oscar Wilde said, everything is in public domain. So there's some reason we have to go, well, this is my archive. Because, when Norman Mailer sold his archive for $1 million, I thought, this was years ago, I goes, geez, mine must be worth at least $5, So immediately I monetized it. I says, I don't care. I just want it to go into a safe place. And then you were like, UCLA and USC said, well, we'll take your pixel archive. And I go, well, there's a little mold on the VHS. I go, nope. And then somehow we connected, and you go, I'll take it. And it was like, what? This was a miracle. So you made feel like it had value because you knew the experimental film world. And then, William Blake says, we become what we behold. So for some reason, we need to think have to hold on to things to find out who we are, which is a great thing. I'm a junkie for libraries. But when you said something earlier, it really blew me out. It's like, what tool did you suggest? You said fire. Burn it down. And I'm like, the futurist were huge influence on me. They said, burn all the museums and libraries down. I don't want to do that. But I think the fact that they have that sensibility is amazing, that they would even suggest that. So, now kids are saying the earth has to be tended to. I'm going to super glue my hands next to a Van Gogh that's covered in glass and throw tomato soup on it, knowing that the soup is not going to hurt the painting, to make our point. What's more important here? Humanity, or, iconize, making art this big icon. So I'm just asking you, sorry to go on and on, but just how do you navigate that? Because you said burn it down, but you don't literally want to burn the archives that you work with down. But why do humans? Yeah.
And just to, just to be perfectly clear, I'm not inciting anyone to violence or to want destruction of other people's property.
Right.
That said, for me to be able to do what I do, I have to I have to relinquish my attachment, to some of the outcomes.
Yeah.
I have to acknowledge that I am making a lot of choices kind of blind,
Yeah.
underinformed. And for me, my obligation is to kind of document my process and acknowledge my positionality as much as possible, to say, like, I made this decision, for these reasons, knowing honestly that it could all get tossed in the trash. It could just not survive the flood. It
Yeah.
could just not make it. And if I were, and I learned that first in my role as a digital archivist at a museum, where I was the first one there, and I when I quit, I realized, like, I was the person that kind of knew how to do what I did here, and I'm not sure that they're going to hire somebody else to do this exact job.
Yeah.
It's not clear. A lot of work in the archives field right now is short-term contract project-based work, and it's signing up for heartbreak taking a job like that, because it requires you to get, often it's you're a processing archivist for a particular collection, and so it requires you to, just at the point that you have become the expert in that collection, it requires you to abandon it. And
Wow. That
it's
is,
really hard,
yeah.
so I think some of that burn it down feeling is defensive. Some of it is just sort of a sense that, like, this will all pass out of our hands eventually, and a lot of the stuff that has survived to become iconic or important has kind of survived in spite of our best efforts to save the important stuff. Like, things turn up in attics and basements, things, really, like, things, a lot of history is just flotsam and jetsam. It's not the
Yeah.
stuff that was actively protected and cherished. I mean, a lot of that stuff is, when you look at it, it's just trinkets. It's
Yeah.
dross. It's not the stuff that people down the road are going to decide is truly important or memorable. And home movies, I think, again, are one of the reasons I love them so much, is that they are a potent and continual reminder of that. That,
It's
like,
so,
the thing that you are recording because you think it's going to be the most important, is not going to be the memory that your family cherishes most from those home movies. It's going to be the part where your baby brother sticks his fist in the toilet and then puts it in his mouth.
that's it. I'll give you a perfect example. I learned to be a performance artist with a Super 8 projector by Kodak, because you could literally run it forward and backwards in different speeds. So I
Mm-hmm.
was a projectionist player. That was my role. And
Mm-hmm.
we would watch with my two sisters and my brother, we'd watch my sister tap her foot next to a swimming pool. And we
Mm-hmm.
thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And we
Yeah.
just ran it backwards and forward and laughed. And then we would
There's
watch.
nothing funnier. I feel
Yeah.
so bad for kids today who don't have that relationship with media technology. Like they can scrub back and forth, but it's not the same. Like, it lacks a hilarity that reverse on a film projector has. Like,
Well, I
scrubbing
think
on a timeline is just not the same
no,
experience.
I would say maybe not, because I found this woman through a freak accident who doesn't know she's an experimental filmmaker and she's making these videos, and it's amazing. And I says, well, why don't you learn the history of experimental film? I'll teach you a little of it. So I have, but it's amazing because she's sort of a dancer and she's doing
Mhm.
what Malcolm McLaren did with or Malcolm what did he do with Pas de Deux, where he had the
Mhm.
dance. So this is all amazing what you're saying, but I'm still curious, is this why we need to hold on to things like Frank Zappa, what you said. Frank Zappa said it so well, the curse of the knick-knack people, like
Mhm.
trinkets. But that's like highbrow and highbrow and lowbrow art. That's what Joyce did with Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah.
He in modernism, it's sort of like, well, Pulp Fiction is as important as highbrow literature. So how do we sort of navigate it? And then what are we going to keep and say, well, this is who we were, and then why do we need? The main thing I'm trying to ask you is, why do we feel we have to archive? Why do is it innate or invented? And I'll just set it up with one quote by Wyndham Lewis, who is an artist and chalked off as a fascist too. He said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So it's like Ram Dass, be here now. Why do we have to even look at stuff in the past when shouldn't we just live in the present?
Yeah. It's funny. There's we talk in the archives field about like the archives are the future of the past. So that's, it's
wait, archives are say that again?
Yeah, archives are the future of the past. Like we, as archivists, the work that we do is to create a future for the past,
yes,
and give it persistence, artists are like writing a history of the future. We're dealing with the future of the past. Nobody's dealing with the past of the present, but who cares? Because that'll sort itself out. That's a closed loop. Why do we collect? What's the curse of the knickknack? That's a really good question. It's one that I'm not sure I have an answer to or answers to. I think it's probably a plural thing. The roots of archival science as it has been practiced, as a well theorized profession, I think come from this idea that that corporations and entities, groups of people working in concert, archives have traditionally, and for the last several hundred years been defined as business records. And archivology has been in service of business records, and it's archives are the transactions, the documents and traces and transactions of a business. So I think it's a way. I think one of the first answers I have for you is that we archive things to have records of juridical persons, corporations, and the works of entities that are not individual humans but composed of many humans acting together. So I think archives are important as a record of collective action. I also because you can write a memoir, if you want to have records of yourself and what you have done, you can write a memoir. And a business entity can't write a memoir. It can only produce the spoor of receipts and correspondence that and documents that become an archives in the most traditional sense. But as far as the individual impulse to collect and compile, I think that's really atavistic. I think that's all about this, for many collectors, it's about the thrill of the chase and the hunting much more than it is about the having.
Yes. That's really important. So that's perfect. The cliche goes, the journey is more important than the destination. Mm-hmm. And it really, to backtrack, I often would say, Louis Buñuel says, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. Now, 99% of people go, that's so cool. I agree with that. One person finally challenged me. He goes, that's bullshit. If I'm going to seek something, it's because I want to find it. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's good, because then I followed up with, well, if the journey is more important than the destination, why do we have to name or seek a destination if the journey is more important?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, are we wandering or are we on a walk? I mean, I mean, are we on a racetrack? Are we, are we following a trail? Yeah, and that implies that you have to go somewhere too, right? Yeah. That like if it's the journey versus destination, I mean, you don't have to go anywhere to be on a journey. You can be on an inward journey. You can be you can be on an emotional journey. I think that I do think arrival is overrated, you know.
Really good. No, and this is like you know, like I say jokingly often in these interviews, I go, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right because that's what the flaneurs did. The flaneurs in Paris in 20s, they just sat there and drank coffee and then they changed the world. And it's called psychogeography. But the great McLuhan joke is that the guide is walking the explorer through the woods, and the explorer goes, I think we're lost. And the guide goes, we not lost, teepee lost.
I love it. And you know, you know, I also like the, you know, the old joke about like, oh well, you know, like we lost my mother the you know, like last year. It's like, you didn't lose her, you know exactly where she is. She's
right. No.
Yeah, I think that framing things is you know, like that if you are not where you intend to be, that you're lost. You know, I have been not where I intended to be for years on end.
Yeah.
But you know, that if I thought that meant that I was lost, then I would be sad. And I'm not sad. I'm really happy. I'm genuinely a happy person. And I feel really lucky to do what I do and to work with the people that I work with. You know, they bring me so much joy. And you asked about, you know, finding meaning, you know, like work and meaningful work. And for me, like you know, the meaningfulness of my work is, you know, paramount for me. Like but I also feel like, you know, I really like, you know, the menial stuff too, like sticking stickers on things. Like I find that deep satisfying. Like the sticking stickers on things is the single best part of my job. Like I get to like
that is so cool.
Get to stick stickers on things.
I set up folding chairs for 40 years, and then Zoom was like, finally, I don't have to set up folding chairs. And people hate to hear this. My events are better on Zoom because people are more attentive. They don't have to park. It's like it's just so, but people don't want to hear that. Then when are the live events going to start? Let's go a little more if you can. What's your hunch? What was the motive of the cave artist?
Oh, like the Lascaux folks?
Yeah.
I think that they're like the same motive that you know, the guys that hold up the fish, you know, like like they're like, this is my big fish that I caught. Like I think you know, the exuberance of those paintings is always just like, look at this like badass thing that happened. Like you would not believe the size of this aurochs, man. Like I really think that they seem celebratory and sort of packed with the, you know, wonderment of like all this shit is happening around us. Like what a crazy day we had.
Right. I love the word
believe it. Yeah, people will
never
believe it. We gotta make a picture of it so people know.
Yeah. I like one person. What's the motive of the cave artist? They said to keep people in the cave.
Yeah. I mean, it's like increase engagement. Like they were just doing it for clicks.
Increased engagement. I have so many great terms you've taught me. So what is more important, conviction or compromise?
Oh my God. I'm going to quote Eartha Kitt. There's such a famous interview of Eartha Kitt being asked, like, you know, would you ever compromise for love? And she's like, compromise for what? For what compromise? And it's so good. I watched that video. It's all over the internet. I watch it probably once a month at least. I love it. Like she just resoundingly rejects the idea of compromise. Like, why would I want to compromise? She says. She says, I fall in love with me, and I want you to, and I invite you to be in love with me. And so yeah, compromise, meh. Like I of course see the utility of it. But I what was the alternative that you mentioned?
Conviction.
Oh yeah, no, conviction all the way. Compromise, you know. And like, if it doesn't mean, if you're compromising, that your convictions are weak.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, compromise is utilitarian and conviction is visionary.
Beautiful. So yeah, I just got to add, we went to see Eartha Kitt at Jazz Club in Hollywood many years ago, and it was like going to a cabaret workshop,
Mm.
because Susie's this professional jazz singer, and we just sat there and studied her. It was amazing. It was just like, thank God we could sit there and just absorb. So
Yeah, I
that
feel
was,
like people use the word icon and iconic too much these days, but
yeah,
Eartha Kitt, like,
yeah,
absolutely iconic. She earned.
amazing. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Just
in
really
your,
lucky you got to see her live. I'm very
yeah,
envious.
no, we were really lucky. And it was like back then, it was like 20 years ago, it was like $80 for the night. It was like, I would have paid $500. It was like
Yeah.
nothing for what we learned and
Mhm.
appreciated. So you've accomplished a lot, Snowden. Rate these three elements in your accomplishments: luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
Oh, luck for sure. I mean, a lot of where I am is a function of where I happened to be at a particular place and time. And I am an ambitious person. I do constantly want more. I told you I like to win. That's no
Yeah,
lie. And I do aspire, to have a positive impact.
yeah,
And so skill is the thing that undergirds each of those things. Like, you can be lucky and you can be in the right place, but if you can't deliver the goods, like, if you don't know how to just do the
yeah,
basic stuff, like, you won't be able to make the most of opportunities. And yeah, skill is something that I I I really I part of the reason I love knitting is it's a thing that I am very skilled at now, after dedicated practice, and many years of work and a lot of, like, tearing stuff out. um but yeah, luck is absolutely at the top of the pyramid. Like, nobody. It's the thing that infuriates me about people who are in positions of power. They, for the most part, feel like they got there from their skill and ambition, when really it's the majority of it for everyone is luck. Like, you just happened to be born rich, or you just happened to
yeah,
be born good looking, or
yeah.
in this country rather than this country, on that latitude rather than that latitude. So I don't think that any human has more or less fundamental potential than any other human. And
It's
so
beautiful. Yeah.
I keep that very much in mind when I look
Yep.
at folks who are getting judged,
Yep.
for not working hard enough, or it's just like, that's like judging somebody for not being lucky enough. You
Yep.
shouldn't do
That's there's a line that goes, the more you practice, the luckier you get.
that. Yep.
But it is, the question used to be, and I want you to answer it if you could, after I explain this, is I used to say, is ambition based more on fear or joy? And I'm meaning in your observations of other humans.
Hmm.
But I changed it because William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist, said in Hollywood, skill and luck have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition.
Hmm.
So, you know, your observations of humans, is ambition based more on fear or joy?
I think it's yeah. I can't speak for all humans. I mean, I think a lot of people are driven um, by different things. Like, I'm driven by a certain amount of whimsy. But yeah, for me it's about joy, and it's about, like, this is the thing that would make me really satisfied or really happy, really joyful. I think other people are driven by, ambition is often a function of acquisitiveness, and just sort of like, I want to have more. um, and
Yeah.
I never have really understood that, or I kind of couldn't get it until I saw, there's a movie called Duplicity, that uh, that has Clive Owen and Julia Roberts are the leads. But um, Paul Giamatti plays a captain of industry who is paying one or both of them to spy on his business rival, and he meets them in a bowling alley, and he says, nobody who knows me would ever think to find me here, because I would never play a game that has a maximum score. Like, that seems so pointless. And that was the first time I really had insight. It's Tony Gilroy who wrote and directed that movie, and it was the first time I really had insight into that kind of mind, where it's like, I know people who are bowlers, and I have tremendous respect for the fact that one of them, has a plaque on the wall at the bowling alley for having bowling a perfect game, like for making that maximum score. And for me, like that, it wouldn't make me want to stop bowling just because I'd done it once. Like, for some people though, ambition is a thing that can be quickly snuffed by something like that. It's like, what, like, why keep playing? Like, if you like, if there's a limit to your achievement. And so keeping money is a way that some people keep score. And they, they like that. They like the idea that there isn't a ceiling on it. I, as somebody who, can struggle sometimes with perfectionism, I like the idea that of things that can be complete. When I was in my first years in the PhD program, that I started and did for a long time and didn't actually finish, I dealt with stress by getting really into doing the New York Times crossword puzzle, because it was one thing every day that I knew I could get a correct answer for. At a time where I was just asking a lot of questions that didn't have answers, and that I, as a researcher, was supposed to go find an answer for, that wouldn't necessarily be the answer. It was really nice to have something in my life that was the answer.
It was the ritual and the process. That's beautiful. I love
the
it.
idea that, like, I can complete this. Like, I may never complete my dissertation, but I can complete this and I can get it right. There will be an empirical rightness that I can achieve, and that will be one small good thing in my life today, if nothing else.
No, that's really good you said that. Now, T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Mostly curse words.
Mostly curse words. That's good.
Yeah, I would not want it published. It would be really embarrassing.
Okay.
Yeah, curse words and like old commercial jingles.
Old commercial jingles. That's good. So, George Manupelli started the Ann Arbor Film Festival like 61 years ago. It's amazing. It's half the age of the medium. His mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, great jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self-expression? I know it's a stupid question again, because it's both, but just your thoughts. Is art making more self-expression, or more you're a vehicle for whatever cultures, technologies, and environments are dominant?
Well, I think it varies based on the artist. I mean, I think for some artists, they need to be working in a more active way. I think other artists, their mode of working, can be more passive. Whether that's because their virtuosity is such that they can, they don't necessarily have a conscious level. They're so embodied, they're so in it, that it just feels like it's passing through them. The one of the projects that I've been working on for the last couple of years is inventorying the collection, and the sort of life's work of an artist named Jay McCafferty, who's based in San Pedro. He died last March, sadly, but he his mark making technique was solar burning. Like, he would use a magnifying glass and he would burn holes, make marks, and so his work is very abstract, but it's not meaningless, and it's very beautiful without being prissy or fussy. It's super organic, and it clearly draws visually on a lot of the world around him, that he experienced and saw. But when he talked about making his work, like he, you know, he was super intuitive, and he would say, I would, you know, I'll be burning, and I'll think like I'll want to try to burn over here, but he's like, my hand just goes where it's going to go. And
Yeah.
he's like, and there's a feeling, he said it, you know, he would get this feeling when like the burn was just right, and it's just sort of like, you know, that feeling when you're using a hole punch, that like that satisfying feeling.
Yes.
That is, you know, that's something that I think, I don't, you know, I don't know that we really have a word for it, but we can all identify with that like sense of rightness, that like, yeah, like that's, you know, that's good. Like, and it's for runners, I think it's when you put your foot right, you know, like each footfall can be an achievement of that like sense of rightness, you know, of things aligning and hitting just so. I think a musician hits a note just so. And you can hear jazz musicians doing that. They're like, yeah, like, you know,
Yeah.
somebody who's cooking, like when the taste is just right, like,
Mm.
I think that we all, I think we're all capable of that. And so whether we are shaping it and forming it and kind of, you know, active in the production of that, whether we're squeezing it out or whether we're just like, you know, letting it flow, I don't think that there's any real difference in the outcome. I think it's
Yep.
just how much we put our bodies through in the process.
It's really good. Now, can art making be egoless?
Sure. It's art interpreting that is egoful,
Yeah.
right? Like, and John Cage said you can't create and analyze at the same time. They're two different processes. I mean, I do think that the creative process is one that is, you know, necessarily, you're going to bring yourself to it. Like, you can't create as anyone other than yourself. Like, forgery is almost always found out. You know, if you try to create as somebody other than yourself, like somebody's going to be able to see through that.
Yeah.
And but you know, but I think that that you also, you know, that what we bring the real ego to is analysis. You know, what we bring the real ego to is saying what we see. You know, and that's okay. You know, ego isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not in
Right.
itself
This is Robert Frost was asked, could you explain that poem? And he said, you mean you want me to say it worse?
bad. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yes.
Like I that was an argument that I would have sometimes with my ex-husband. Was like, I would say something, yeah, I would say like a declarative sentence, like they were out of milk at the store. And he'd be like, what do you mean? Like, I don't have other words to say
Right.
what I just said. Like, I'm just gonna repeat it slower
Right.
and louder and hope you understand, like
Right.
somebody who doesn't even speak the language that I'm speaking, because
Yeah.
I don't have any other words for you.
Yeah. This is amazing how you brought up taste, because I wanted to fit this question in is my friend has the 3 T's of music: theory, technique, and taste. So theory, you know what chord you're hitting; technique, you know how to play it. How does one acquire taste? So even, you know, in your world, you've had an aesthetic, you know, you somehow you understood that Pixel Vision toy video camera had some value, and some people like, that's horrible. You know, like one person came up to us after about, you know, we're about to show the 32nd annual festival this Sunday. It's like, can you believe 32 years? In about 20 years into it, someone came up to me at the end and said, it seems with all this new digital technology, you could fix the picture.
It is fixed.
It is.
That tape, like that's the whole point. It's fixed in a
But
tangible
you know,
medium.
why does one, so you know what I'm saying, how does one acquire taste? How does one gravitate towards this film and not that film, or this, you know, art and not that artist, you know?
Asparagus or Brussels sprouts.
Right.
Yeah. That's so funny because it's both and, right. There's stuff that you just like right away. You know,
Yeah.
there's love at first sight. And 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 sometimes, but not always, that is the stuff that is more accessible and more mainstream, but not always. You know, there is, and then there's stuff that you like more when you have been taught more, or you've been, where you have guidance and insight to understand more of what's going on, like that you appreciate it more. And then there's stuff that you can appreciate, but just you never actually like it, and I think taste is a lot about what you like.
Yep.
And I think, axiomatically, familiarity breeds contempt. Like, you may actually come to like stuff less the more time you spend with it. You may have less respect for it when you start seeing how it's put together and realize that, like, oh, all of this, I think that there are some filmmakers, and I don't really care to name names because I don't think that's, there's no call for that. But there's some filmmakers that I've seen a lot of their work, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not that into it anymore, because like I just see you're doing the same thing over and over again, and I really wish you'd do something different. Like, might be, and I might be more into your work if it were if you made some mistakes, like, if you made a few failures and put them out and own them. I think that's one of the reasons that I like David Lynch's work a lot, is, and he, you quoted a couple of I think Buñuel and somebody else about being really conscious. Like, David Lynch is like fully disconnected, and like he's like, I don't even know what my stuff means. Like, and he really owns that. And he's somebody who's a transcendental meditator, and he's somebody who really, like he creates he creates dreams. Like, he works from his dreams and creates waking dreams, and he doesn't care so much about what they mean or what they stand for. Like, he's just like, this is what it is. Like, make of it what you will. Not my job.
Not my job. Yeah, it's like the artist creates their work and it's no longer theirs. That's McLuhan's main flip mid-career, was the user is the content.
Yeah.
But what you touched on was really usually people say exposure. How do you acquire trace exposure? But you flushed it out a lot bigger. In Igor Stravinsky says, most people don't know what they like what they know.
Yeah.
So
and that's very true for for flavors. I think that there are, I come from a very white family, and the flavors that I grew up with, I now recognize as being somewhat unvaried, and bland. If you want to put a kind of negative sound on it, they're comforting as well. And they will always be the flavors that I grew up with. They'll never be bad. But they're so different from the flavors that I choose and fill myself with now. And the flavors I seek out, and my ability to tolerate different kinds of tastes and to appreciate, durian fruit or kimchi or things that are sort of like the strong flavors of something else. That is something that I work at being able to embrace. And I want to have different things.
I'm so with you, man. I grew up on Hawaiian punch, buttered noodles, and white rice with cinnamon and sugar and butter on it. It's like, ugh. But I know if I tasted any of those, the taste would like feel like what Warhol did.
Yeah.
It's called comfort food. That's what Warhol did. He says, I'm taking my comfort food and saying, I'm going to point at it. Like Duchamp said, the artists of the future will only have to point. So that's what Andy did. He just pointed at Campbell Soup and goes, so you brought up this weakness thing. Moshe Feldenkrais says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness.
Yeah.
Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Oh, well, my mom found a sheet of paper, years and years ago that I could conclusively date to a very, very specific week in my life, late in my junior year of high school. And it was a list of things that I hated about myself on one side of the sheet of paper, and then on the other side, it was a list of things that I loved about myself. And the like 1 through 30 on the things I hate about myself side was like completely filled out, and then the things I love about myself side was not there. It was totally blank, which was like very ironic of me as a 16-year-old. But one of the things was just like I talk too much and I don't know when to shut up. I mean, I do think that my ability to speak has become, it has gotten me in trouble a lot. And it has been it's one of the reasons that people who don't like me don't like me. Not everybody is a Snowden Becker fan, and that's fine. But the thing is, I'm called on to speak sometimes, and I do think that having the voice that I have, having the ability to speak, carries with it some privileges and some power.
Yeah.
And getting to use that to say things that are important, on behalf of other people, not to speak for them, because that's dangerous. That's not what people are asking for, and it's not what people want, but to speak of them to others, in places where they might not otherwise be, I think is really important. And in that circumstance, not knowing when to shut up is really good. That's a real strength, like not knowing when I'm going to get myself in trouble, because I shouldn't care if I'm going to get myself in trouble if I'm going to do it for somebody else.
Snowden is really great. And I appreciate you being willing to carry on and on here, because I'm a talker too, and get both of us together, we could go on for hours, but I don't want to wear you out. I don't want to wear you out.
I don't want to wear out a listener. For anybody who's still tuned in.
Oh, that's data. We don't, there's no, it doesn't matter. This is an archive.
This is for
but
us.
I mean, how do you feel energy wise? You want to go another 10, 15, or just give me a ballpark?
I feel like every question you've asked me has been so
okay. Let's just keep going.
I'm into it.
Okay, let's go organically, because see, I did watch you on YouTube a couple, before we started, and you were talking about the body cam, and I was like, oh, this is perfect, because you sort of summarized who you were to this Zoom session in about 5 minutes. And I loved how you put, well, I'm into home movies and I'm an archivist, and you really put it well. But it raised this question that I bring up in our discussion groups all the time about requiring cops to have cameras on going. And my feeling is, well, of course, that's like a no-brainer, sort of, but don't we want to nurture a society where people treat each other humane, because that's the humane thing to do, not because, oh, the camera's on me and I can just angle it and beat the shit out of the guy over here and the camera doesn't catch it, or say the camera didn't work. So how do you sort of talk about that? We want to require cameras, or go ahead. Yeah.
I think it's so. I want to pair this with that question you asked earlier about like thinking through the consequences of our technology, and I think that's technology. Body-worn cameras for cops and for anyone, honestly, like Google Glass, same story, really. It's worn on the body. It purports to be our lived perspective, but it's really not. It's the camera's perspective that closely replicates, but doesn't perfectly match our own lived experience. And because of the limitations of the device and of the human body and perceptive mechanisms, and what we didn't think through, I think, when it came to body-worn cameras is, that the degree to which having that camera record would just create more distrust. That it is not, it's another perspective on what happened. It's like the third person in Rashomon, right? You have your cop, you have your member of the public with whom they are interacting, and then you have the camera. That's the third storyline, and that is as we know from watching that classic film, those three stories are like incommensurable. They're never going to match up. And who's telling the truth?
Yeah.
And it has created, I think, a level of distrust in what we used to think of as being empirical and truthful without a compensating acceptance or acknowledgement of the fact that like the camera is just another story. It's not the story, it's
Yeah.
another story. And I think that it also you know, has brought, I think one of the good things about it is people were thinking in the early years of the body cam era that, oh, like this is going to be the thing, you know, this is going to be the solution. We're gonna have the evidence. We're gonna have them dead to rights. We're gonna be able to show that like a cop did something bad, or that a person did something bad, and the cop is at fault. You know, the reason that body cams took off is because cops were like, oh yeah, no, this is good for us too.
That's
like
true. Yep.
you know, it's and every single video format that has been used in law enforcement has gone through that cycle of like resistance and acceptance of, no, we don't want this because it's going to give away our secrets and it's going to make us look bad, and like, oh, actually no, it's going to help us because it's going to show that this person is lying and not us for a change. So but what body cams have shown to, I think, most people is that it's never been about having compelling evidence. We've always had witnesses to police misconduct. We've had bystanders who could tell a tale or two. Having incontrovertible camera evidence has not changed the fact that our laws and policy in this country include a lot of systemic racism, a lot of policy that's like, this is, you know, this is like I was acting exactly as I've been trained to do. I used force exactly within the boundaries of the law, and I'm not culpable because I have, you know, this qualified immunity that says like, if I am in fear for my life as a police officer is more valuable in the eyes of society than yours, so I get a free pass. That, I think, is the best part of body cams, is it has created an awareness and acceptance not just of the realities of you know, police and civilian conflict. It has driven home the idea that fundamentally, you know, this is the tools of the master, the tools of the master and the master's house. It's that fundamentally the underlying principles of law enforcement and policing in our country are flawed if you have certain objectives for rule of law and social order. And those are the things that have to change. I mean, we have to end qualified immunity. We have to create a new philosophy of policing.
Yeah, it really, Snowden, well put, because it's McLuhan teaches us every invention has services and disservices. And it's to suss it out by saying understanding is not having a point of view, saying I'm for body cams or I'm against it. Suss out the services and disservices and get the big picture, which you just laid out so well, because I thought the Oscars failed because they didn't give that Black woman who shot the George Floyd footage the Oscar for best cinematography. And what did it do to her life? She said it wrecked my life because every night I thought I should have put the camera down and done something. Are you crazy? That 8 minutes changed the world in a lot of ways, and we owe her a lot, but it wrecked her life in a way, you know.
And she experiences the same or similar, I can't speak to what she's experiencing, but that same and similar trauma is endured by photojournalists, you know, war correspondents, everybody who bears witness.
Bears witness. Good way.
And the pervasiveness of personal recording devices. You know, you talked about the moral obligation of the artist. Like, we are all potentially creators now. Everybody who holds a camera or is in proximity to a camera, you know, and that's not the whole world. That you know, that technology is unevenly distributed still, but you know, we are forced to weigh the obligation of, do I document, do I bear witness, or do I actively intervene? Am I a bystander? Am I an ally? Am I an active bystander? We have all these new categories to sort ourselves into in a moment when, at any moment we could be part of history. We don't know we're part of history until well into the future.
Citizen journalism said that's my hero in a lot of ways, but you got to. But now here's a French theorist, film theorist, and documentarian, Jean Rouch, says, if I put a camera between me and you, it's more true than if there's no camera. Like if we sat in a room for 2 hours and did this, it would have been totally different. But our faces are in fact in front of each other and we're listening more closely. So my question is perception reality?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, what we think we see, is our manufactured reality. And our, I will go ahead and speak freely here, thinking that my dad may or may never actually watch this, but my father, after his second stroke, started saying that he had a photographic memory, and that he'd always had a photographic memory. And it's interesting to me. I see it as a coping mechanism, and not, just a lie or a self-aggrandizement. But I also know that, like, from everything we know scientifically, I mean, my dad's a hard scientist. He has a PhD in oceanography. Like, I think he should know better, but he doesn't. Like, he really thinks of memory as being, it's inscribed and it's fixed. But everything we know about memory scientifically, everything we're able to evaluate, is that we rewrite memory every time we have it. We re-encode. It's not at all fixed. It's really malleable, and it's really, but memory really, really shapes who we are. Our memories of who we are, and how we remember things. It's really hard to shake, even if you were, and that's why we have this Mandela phenomenon, this idea that, like, oh, like, people collectively remember things wrong. But the wrong seems more real than the right, even when we're looking at the real and the right. Like, it doesn't feel real and right anymore. So that's perception being reality.
Yeah. That's James Joyce says it so well. He says, remember to forget.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, good luck. So here's something. I don't want to go off too much explaining it, but I'm going to see Nina Mencken's film Brainwashed. Have you seen it?
I haven't.
Okay. You know what it's about, or
No,
about
I
it?
don't. Please tell me.
So Nina Mencken's made a film that's sort of like a TED Talk. It's a feature documentary on lights, camera, power, and it's how the male gaze, let's say, has dominated Hollywood. So I think it's a powerful subject. And you go back to John Berger, who started talking about art of seeing as the human gaze. Then you go back to my friend, it's like, who invented human eye contact? He said, well, we might have invented eye contact because we look into our mother's eyes and she gives us milk and we're like, wow. So there's this thing called the gaze, or the eye contact. So let's go into the word gaze. So then Laura Mulvey in 1972 wrote The Female Gaze. Then a couple of years ago, this other film came out called Be Natural, about Alice Guy Blanchet. And I was like, holy moly, how did I not know about this woman? She got blackballed out of film history. I mean, literally. And then some people go, well, we knew about her, but like, Catherine Hardwicke saying, I'm a woman director, I didn't know about her. So, it was an important film, but who saw it? So I'm saying, did Alice 130 years ago, she's starting cinema with George Méliès. Did she have a female gaze? Because basically she was raised watching, looking at photographs and paintings that were mainly done by males. I mean, it's dominated by, thank God for the Guerrilla Girls. They're my heroes. Like, how, so what I'm talking about here. I'm sorry so my question is can you discuss, is there the human gaze, the female gaze, the male gaze? Should we do that? Or what is the what's this about for you?
Yeah, should we? I don't know. Do we? Absolutely. I mean, and there's a lot of like internalized misogyny, I think, in a lot of women's work still. I think a lot of women make work that is reflective of internalized misogyny. I think like every woman's self-portrait has a certain amount of internalized misogyny in it. Still, it's a tough thing to shake. Patriarchy's a hell of a drug, man.
Yeah.
um and I think that we yeah, I think that there's something really interesting about the idea of the camera as being this new tool that is, that's not gendered. That like the typewriter was initially not, there are tools that were not initially gendered, or you would think it's an invention, it shouldn't be gendered that way, or like the use of it shouldn't be gendered. And yet somehow it becomes gendered, like, like you don't touch, that's not for you. um it happens for so many things. And again, speaking as a knitter, the idea of knitting needles as being something that is strongly gendered, I mean, it's now seen as a female, predominantly female craft. But the early knitters were fishermen. They were netters. The crafts are gender neutral, inherently. That if you have hands, you can do handiwork. But is there a reason that scrimshaw never became like a female hobby or habit? I don't know. There doesn't seem to be any uniting logic to any of
Yeah.
it. And there are some incredibly talented and gifted knitters, and who are male, and who I think, looking at their stuff, it's like, yeah, I could not, I couldn't imagine, I couldn't create that like that. And I don't know if that means that there's like a male strand, if you want to
Right,
call it,
right, right.
for knitting, something that is inherently gendered. And of course, I think that gets into the very vexed question of binaries, and the idea that there's, a gender binary, or two ends of a gender continuum, along which we might um, establish ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think it is important to think of things as being, part of a continuum rather than a binary. That like it's
Yeah.
male and female are always connected, and sometimes, um, you know sometimes they're blended, sometimes they're existing in opposition. But it's, ends of a teeter totter, right? That you can't have one without the other, and they are constantly interacting. But
Well, that
yeah.
was good, Stone, because it really brought up this. The history of this question was, I used to say, what's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Hmm.
You know what I was fishing for? The people would go, none. There's no
Hmm.
difference. And I loved when they would say that. But 80% would say female are more emotional, men are more linear, blah, blah,
Mm,
blah. So then I stopped asking it, because men would go, nope, I won't go there. It'll get me
hmm.
in trouble. And
Yeah.
so then I dropped the question, and I says, don't drop that question, keep it in there. So I've sort of struggled
Yeah.
in
No,
sort
I
of
mean,
sense.
this is the thing. This is why it's such a complicated question, right? That it is like, it is it's just as wrong to say like I don't see gender as it is to say I don't see color. Like, the fact is, it is very much there, and denying it is not doing anybody a
Yeah,
service. The social construction of race and the social construction of gender, you can absolutely ascribe to most of those things as being largely socially constructed, and not something that is innate or biologically driven. But still, see that like the social construction has a basis in that biology, or in that, sort of like
yeah.
natural essentialism. And as somebody who's gone through her life as a woman in America, and it has been interesting to live through the Me Too um era, as it's referred to. My ex-husband, when the Weinstein revelations were coming fast and furious, he said something. We were talking at the end of the day one evening, and he said, it's so fascinating. Like it's like a soap opera. Like every day there's a new thing. And I was like, it's, I guess, to your credit as a man, that this is something that you can be so detached from, that it's entertaining to you, that you see it as engrossing. Because for me and for every woman I know, it's exhausting, and it's
exactly
traumatizing. And
yeah
we didn't get a choice to live our lives in that way. Like you chose not to, rape or assault anyone, and
yeah
that's great. So none of this is really touching you deeply. But for all of us, all of the women I know, it has been a hard time,
yeah
because it stirs up a lot of shit. And
yeah
so you can't tell any of us that there's no such thing as gender,
yeah
because that's not our lived experience. And the power of maleness and of patriarchy is something that we're still very much contending with. I
yeah
love that we have a generation of people that is growing up with greater freedom to distinguish
yep
themselves, being somewhere else on the continuum. I'm really happy for
yep
everybody who has that option. I don't think their lives are any less complicated or fraught, but I do love that they have other choices that they get
yeah
to make. And I think that it's incumbent on us to be supportive of those choices, and not be whiny about, like pronouns. What's the big deal with
yeah
pronouns? Just be kind. Like just
yeah
talk to people like they want to be talked to, and acknowledge the full humanity of other people.
be kind. And yeah, I love the words be kind. So
Mhm.
what caused matriarchy?
What caused matriarchy? I mean, that presumes that matriarchy is not our natural state of existence. Like, what caused patriarchy? I say, like, who died and
Yeah, well,
left us?
that's yeah. Well, here's the funny thing. I asked uh Eric McLuhan, Marshall's son, what caused matriarchy, and no, I says what caused patriarchy. He says, well, men. But I think it's a complicated question. Here's what caused matriarchy? Because see, that's almost assuming there was a time when women ruled.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
this is like, I would say what caused matriarchy is biology, because women give birth. And that is sort of a form of establishing the home. And here's the home, and I'm running the home.
Some
But
women give birth. I don't. um,
right,
and that's that's speaking of movies, Woman King just came out, and that's that is a movie about ruling and leadership decisions made by women who chose childlessness,
right.
in favor of protecting a nation. um, I think that, yeah, I think that, and as any feminist will tell you, like fertility doesn't define womanhood. um,
Right.
but but it is a critical issue for all of us, in post Dobbs decision. Fertility is a factor. Like, I've chosen not to have children, but I am still fertile. I could still get pregnant, and so I
Yeah.
still have skin in that game.
Yeah.
And I may for a few years yet, and so I feel less safe in this world and in this nation than I did at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
strictly for that reason. And it's not because I have, it's not because I have a lot at stake. Like that is it, and that's patriarchy. Like, if we were in a matriarchy, that wouldn't even be a question. The
Yeah.
question of bodily autonomy for every person,
Yep.
and the choice of childbearing would not even be in question.
Yeah. Well put. So, anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
Oh, anger can be a productive emotion when you are directing it in the appropriate ways.
Yeah.
I think a thing I talk a lot in my personal and professional life about is social emotional learning, and this idea that for a lot of kids, it takes focused effort to identify that you're feeling emotions, identifying what those emotions are, where they're coming from, like what's causing them, what's giving rise to them, and and what you're doing with them. And then, only at the end of that, like that's a very long process. Most people, struggle even with the first part, like that. Oh yeah, I'm feeling emotions, like I'm hungry, that's why I'm cranky, like I should
Yep.
probably eat something.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to snap at you, my partner, my spouse, because it's the end of the day. I'm hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, and I haven't eaten all day. And you, you left a towel on the bathroom floor. Like that's like that. That social emotional learning, that self-regulation, and that sort of self-awareness, knowing that you are having emotions at all, let alone what those emotions are. A lot of people struggle with that. And so
Yes.
anger is useful when that's what you're feeling, and when where where it's coming from, and you're able to react appropriately to it. That's when anger is useful. Otherwise
Really.
it can just eat you up. Or anger is, depression is anger turned inward. It
Yep.
can really, really do a number on you, anger.
Yep. There's a line that goes like this, Snowden: you create what you resist. And Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into you are what you hate.
Mm-hmm.
James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you respond to this idea? I'm not saying you, Snowden, you create what you resist. Like one creates what one resists. You've surveyed a lot of artists. You know artists deeper than them sometimes. How do you process that line? You
Well,
create what you resist.
yeah, it's yin and yang, right? It's
Yeah.
light and dark. Like there is no light without darkness. Jay McCafferty, he created by destroying. Like he burned to build. That like there wasn't any art there until he burned pieces of it away. A sculptor works negatively. Positive and negative space are always at play in two-dimensional
Yeah.
artwork. So yeah, they of course they exist. And a lot of people never fully appreciate that, right? Like a silhouette artist cuts away, and I think one of the flaws in academia right now is the emphasis on criticism, not critique but criticism. Like this is what's wrong and this is what's wrong, and like I'm smarter than you because I'm going to point out the weaknesses in your argument. And like I don't like this. And I've worked with students and young professionals, people new to my field, who have only defined the negative scope. They only know what they don't want to do. And it's like, well, what
Yeah.
do you want to do? What brings you joy?
Yeah.
What is your ambition? What is it? What is a thing you want to have, not a thing you want to not be?
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that if you are, especially if you are a really intelligent person, it is easy to hone just one end of your pencil, right? You can just be poking holes in things. But if you don't pay some attention to what's good, I mean, that's a question, that's a greeting I really love. Like, hey man, what's good? Like, to remind people to give some thought to, like, here's what's good about this. Like, what do we
Yeah.
value? Like, I may think this guy's ideas are horrible, but I love his way of expression. Like,
Yeah.
his choice, or he's a wonderful craftsperson of language, but I think that he's a fucking fascist, and that's
Well
and
put.
appreciating that, like
Yeah.
appreciating. I've been working on a project where I've been doing qualitative analysis, sort of rhetorical analysis of discourse, and I have to give some props to a lot of people that I'm politically diametrically opposed
Yeah.
to, because of the skill with which they imply and impugn and sort of like lump people in together without ever actually saying anything. They're incredibly skilled and very, very savvy, and therefore very convincing. And I, it's don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yep.
But I have a ton of respect for a lot of people's craft, and I think that that's what's important. Not to say that that person is bad for having these bad ideas or bad thoughts or saying these bad things. They're bad because they're using their skill towards a bad end. They're very, very good at it, and that's why
Yep.
they're dangerous.
Yep. And that's one thing that you evoked was Jean Cocteau said, when your teacher or your family looks at your first piece of art and they give you a criticism,
Mhm.
exploit that for the rest of your career.
Yep.
You know, that's what made you unique, because they're saying, oh, but anyways, I've got a few more. Let's carry on, and we're almost done. But I mean, like I said, this could go on forever. Can you forget to die?
Like, can you forget to just like have your heart not beat? And yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people like just die really early and then keep on living past it. Like some
Yeah.
people I mean, so in two senses, like you can forget to die, like you can be living right up until the minute that death comes for you. But you can also forget to die because you have decided to do it so early in your life that you go on living well past the point where you're deriving any enjoyment from it. Like
Yeah.
I've met a few miserable bastards and biddies in my day, and those are people who forgot to die. Like they did
Yeah.
everything but like they're just haunting a space and a body without having left it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can
Listen,
absolutely forget to die.
that was great, because that question stumps people, and I've been asking it for a while, and it was good because you sussed it out, because it can be interpreted several ways, and you sussed out each way. So these are 5 questions by Alan Watts, just off the top of your heads, known in a couple words. First one is, who started it all?
We didn't start the fire. I know that. Who started it all? We'll never know. We'll never know.
Are we going to make it?
Yes, of course we're going to make it.
Where do we put it?
Do we need to put it anywhere, or can we just keep moving it around?
I like that. You're answering a question with a question. That you win. That's what this series is all about, embedding new questions. Okay, 4th Alan Watts is, who's cleaning it up?
Oh, this is like how much does it cost? Like you always pay for it, right? We're all going to have to clean it up. Even the people who think that they're getting away with it, they're going to clean it up too. Everybody
Good.
has a side job at the restaurant of life.
The rest, that's good. The 5th Alan Watts is it serious?
Yes and no.
Nice.
Yes,
Bravo.
100% serious. No, absolutely not. Yes and no, both at the same time and equally.
I like that. That's Frank Zappa said, I'm very serious about being not serious.
Yeah, and I think that isn't that the very definition of sophistication, right? Being able to hold two competing ideas in your head at the same time. That takes real work. That can be exhausting, but it's also kind of the only way to get through this.
Yep.
Whatever this is.
Yeah, that's the main thing I learned from Frank, is embrace contradiction. You don't need to fight it. How do you find peace of mind?
How do I find peace of mind? The way I sleep tonight is on any night is just accepting that I did my best, and or like that I tried to do my best. That's how I find peace of mind, is just like, yeah, I could have done it differently and better, but not the me that I was then. Like I know now, like accepting that human beings only move through the 4th dimension in one direction. That's how I find peace of mind. Because I can't, I know a lot of people who dwell in regret, and I just can't do that.
Yeah. I'm sorry to reference Zappa completely so many times, but one of my favorite lines by him was, I'm a failure, but I'm not a miserable failure.
That's really beautiful.
Isn't that
Yeah.
good?
I think that that's really beautiful. I have become much more friendly with my failures
Yeah,
over the last few years. I think in part because there have been more of them. There's just a lot of them around, and and also because I value what they've taught me. My failures have
yeah,
been really really instructive.
yep. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Oh my god. Oh, oh, I would say that the lessons are all coming. That you know that it is God, 12 was a rough year for me, Jerry. That was my first year back in public school after being homeschooled for 3 years. And it was like a bumpy bumpy reinsertion. Um yeah, I just, you're fine. You're fine. Like
Yeah,
you're going to just continue to become the person that you already are. You're going to become more and more that person, and you're going to be more and more comfortable being her. It's, other people will or will not get that. I mean, 12 was the year that I made some mistakes that I realized like I was going to get picked on no matter what, and so I might as well do what pleased me. So 12 depends on what part of my 12th year I'm encountering me on the street, but I might already have that wisdom. I might just high five me and keep on walking. Be like,
high five. That's what we can do on Zoom. Give me a high five right
high
now. That's
five.
cool.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
There it is. So,
Thank you.
which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or
Over the
under?
top. Over the top. There's no other answer to this. Over the top, always.
Why? Why?
Because because that's how the professionals do it. If you go into a hotel, they always like do the little point. And secondly, that's how it comes off the roll easiest that way. Like
No.
if it's down the back of the wall, like the end gets lost. And depending on the toilet paper holder or dispenser, like sometimes if you're rolling it out, like it just gets wadded up back there. So always over the top.
Well, it's great because the patent is over 100 years old and it has it going over. But you should
Absolutely.
hear 90,
There's
95.
documentary evidence about that.
Yeah, 95% of people agree with you and me, but the 5% who say under have their reasons.
See, and then you asked earlier if there is evil in the world, and like that is my case in point. There is evil in the world, and it's the people who think that toilet paper goes the wrong way. That is, yeah. I don't know. They're like who dropped them on their heads as infants, but it's just there.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Oh my gosh, I've had this discussion so many times. Oh, it really, gosh, it just depends on the day. More wine, please. The Snowden Becker story.
Oh, I like that. More wine, please. And they want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Ooh, fresh cut grass.
Oh, that's one of my favorite. Okay,
It's
now
really
that
good.
if a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Huh. It would be made of wood so that it would weather nicely. And it wouldn't have to be a portrait of me. It could be, it could be completely abstract. I like those Deborah Butterfield sculptures that
Yeah,
are horses, cast of driftwood.
love them.
Um,
Yeah,
where would it be? It could be in the middle of nowhere. I would like for it to be a surprise that
yep.
people run across it in, just some sort of random place. There have been so many things in my life that I've run across in very unexpected places, and I love a thing out of place or a thing in its place that seems to be out of place like that. I love
Yeah.
encountering that, and it would be a great honor to have something like that made in my memory, like to give somebody else
Great
a
answer for the supreme goddess archivist,
oh,
just
thank
out of
you.
the way. Yeah. So tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Something good I never had and never want. Oh gosh, I guess enough money not to have to work hard anymore. Like I always
Well,
want to work hard. Yeah,
that's that's the answer I get the most are
yeah,
money,
money.
fame, and heroin.
Hmm. Hmm. I
That's
mean heroin, I don't even know if it's any good. I haven't tried
yeah,
it. Well, it
right.
might be. I hear good things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, lots and lots of money. Like that
Yeah.
is widely accepted as good, but I don't think I ever want it.
Yep.
I want some money, just
Yeah.
not lots and lots. I want enough.
Three three more and we're out of here, Snowden. What a pleasure. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Well, we talked earlier about people's ability to self-define in broader
Yeah.
ways than they ever have.
Yeah.
Um, the 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 cultural shift that I'm afraid is happening is people being really fearful of others. But
Yeah.
I think that globalism and the ability to access more people, the shift towards um, mainstream media or mass media having other kinds of people than white people in it is a shift I really love. Like I love hearing other stories. I love the the cacophony of voices
Yeah.
that we have right now. I love listening to that.
It's great. So Thornton Wilder said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 2.5 hours. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you, Snowden?
Yeah, I consider myself such an open book, and but that's a question that's hard for me to answer. What's it really all about for me? Um, I just want to leave things a little bit better than I found them.
Yeah.
I want to leave things a little bit better than I found them. That's what it's all about for me.
Yep.
I will be, and I feel like I already have, but that also fills me with an ambition to do more,
Yep.
a little bit more.
It's really beautiful. It's such a universal hope that we hope everybody has. Like, can we make
Mhm.
the world a better place? What gives you the most optimism?
The fact that that I as an individual and we collectively have lived through so much and we're still going. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the best slash worst part about being somebody who traffics in history and the stuff of human memory is
Yeah.
my sense that there's very little that we haven't, whether atrocity or admirable achievement. There's very little that we haven't done before. There's nothing new. All problems are 1,000-year problems, so it's okay we haven't solved them. um, but it is also disappointing, that we're still in this. It's like when I go to the bookstore and I have, I have a problem and I see that there's a self-help book for exactly that problem, and I always end up crying because I'm like, if it's so common, there's a book for it, then why am I not better already? Like if we know about it, why haven't we fixed it? So the yeah, that's what keeps me optimistic, is like we're still engaged. We
Yep.
haven't given up as a species, as a society. We're still in it, which means we might win it.
Yeah. Win. I love that. That's the joke is the person goes into the bookstore and says, "Where's your self-help books?" And the clerk goes, "Wouldn't that defeat the whole purpose?" But I love what you said because I structured the whole interview like this. What's the best thing for a human being? Well, Wilhelm Reich says the best thing for a human being is another human being. And
And
it's
I agree.
amazing how people yeah, that's how you said it.
Yep,
Then
right
they
there.
ask
Got it.
they go ahead, sorry.
I said he's got it. Yeah, he nailed it. Other
Yeah,
people are really great for us.
And then the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? I got that was a question they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he says that what gives me the most optimism is other people. So it is, this being still engaged and having hope, and I feel like this McLuhan line summarizes what I got from this time with you. Is he said, communication of the new is a miracle, but not impossible. So, I felt I've learned a lot of newness from you, and it's been fun spending this time with you. And, I love the line that Eden Abez wrote in his song, Nature Boy. He says, the greatest lesson you'll ever learn is to love and be loved in return.
I know that's a really, I think about that often. And I know you must know, after 32 years of doing the film festival, like and for me, we're in 20 years of doing home movie day events. Like if you told me I'd be doing something, for 2 decades or 3 decades, like, and that it would still be fresh and exciting and engrossing to me, I wouldn't necessarily have believed you. But I'm so glad that it's true. Like, it is possible for things to continually surprise, and delight me. I am a naturally positive person, and I come to most situations willing to be pleased with what I find there. And this has been such a pleasant experience, Jerry. It's
thank you so much.
You've vindicated once again my philosophy of just saying yes when asked. That this is you've asked me questions that made me think hard, and let me talk towards some answers for myself. So I really appreciate the opportunity to engage in a discussion like this. So
super cool.
So delightful.
Yeah, and let's do a salon on any subject in the future, like on home movies, and then we can have like 4 or 5 people, and there's endless subjects we could cover. But even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends, Snowden, and we can keep talking forever and ever.
Jerry, we've been in touch for so long. I mean, why would we stop now? There's no good reason.
That's it. ain't